Welcome, welcome. Come on, come all. This is the Big House Breakdown. All things Michigan football, all the time. You are rocking with the best. You are rocking with the Vic 7. A2 crew stand up, come through. This is for you. Why? Because our team is in a college football playoffs. We went ahead and added the third trophy to the mix. So that's why we three-peating out here. We three-peating on the Big Ten. We three-peating on Zero State. That's what we call them here on the show. They aren't Ohio State. They are Zero State. And we want you to come and join along. A2 crew, come through, stand up. We are talking all things Michigan football, but especially this now. Lies, hype, and fairy tales. That's right. Lies and the truth. You're going to get it here on the Big House Breakdown. We are blasting off to 1, 2, 3, 4 Facebook channels. We are on twitch.tv. We are on Twitter. We are on Instagram. We are on Mob Crush, D Live, Trovo Nation. We are everywhere you want to be. Check us out. We're going to put the call letters. So, in case anybody wants to call in, we're going to attach those right now to our programming on the bottom so that you could share this link with anyone. They can come on board, and as long as they're ready to talk some serious college football, we good. But if you come in here like a goofball, you're gonna leave out like a goofball. You're gonna get swatted. You're gonna get sent up the fairway from a 7-iron, fast and in a hurry. Don't worry, our vision ain't blurry on the real Big House Breakdown on the Real HD Network. So here is our call letter, StreamYard.com, IPNFZMV3CE. So join in. You can rock with us if you'd prefer. Um, we're going to talk about the Michigan, all things Michigan Wolverines, all things college football, because the Michigan Wolverines are in the Rose Bowl in the college football playoffs, playing in the granddaddy of them all. And that's going to happen on January 1st at 5 p.m. in Pasadena, California, with the sun setting. It's going to be oh so pretty. And the reason why this video is done and this is a part two, by the way, Lies, Hype, and Fairy Tales, part two. Part one was about maybe a week ago or so. And now we're into part two of Lies, Hype, and Fairy Tales. Because I'm a little tired of hearing it. I don't know if the A2 crew who's listening right now, put it in the chat if you're listening and you're tired of the lies and the hype and the fairy tales as it pertains to your number one team, the Michigan Wolverines, and our chances against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Now, I must say that I'm a little conflicted because my daughter is going is down in Bama and she attends Alabama University. So she's a Crimson Tide, and that's cool. And how did we know that during this particular season, our paths will cross like this? I could have predicted it. I could have put on my genie hat and told y'all that this was going to pop off the way that it's popping off. But who was to know? But anyway, these are luxury problems. These are luxury problems. The fact that Michigan is playing Bama in the college football playoffs, the fact that my daughter is attending Bama and I'm a Michigan fan, that's like, my wife being an Ohio State fan, which she isn't, and I'm a Michigan dude. So that's crazy, but we gonna deal with it. We are the big house breakdown. So as it were, let's check out the college football scene as it wound up. And I'm going to make that StreamYard piece a ticker on the bottom. So in case anybody wants to, join in, they can still see it from below. And let's run it. All right. Thank you, Mr. Producer. He ran it for me. And now we are talking about the college football rankings as they wound up after at the end of the season. So you got Michigan 1, Washington number 2, um, Texas number 3, Bama is 4. Ooh, here we go. Florida State is 5. Georgia is 6. Zero State is 7. Oregon is 8. Mizzou is 9. Penn State is 10. Ole Miss is 11. Oklahoma 12. LSU takes the 13th spot. 14th is Auburn. 15th is Louisville. 16th is Notre Dame. On and on and on. Do you have beef with this? What say you about the way that all of these dropped? And then of course we have this. Wow. Florida State got robbed. They got their wallet pickpocketed from them, snubbed, bamboozled, led amok, run astray, whatever playful word you have for the crime scene that Florida State was, because they did not get picked by the college football committee as one of the top 4. Now, what that says about the integrity of the sport, I don't know. What I do know is that this has get the bag written all over it. Why else would you pick? Why else would you leave an undefeated team out of the college football picture? If it wasn't for the get the bag moment. Now, if you wanted to have them behind Washington, if you wanted to have them, um, if you wanted to rearrange the order and it be Michigan, Washington, Florida State, and then Texas, nobody would be mad at you. And you still wouldn't be giving Michigan a gimme game in the first round. If that's what the Michigan haters are worried about, that Michigan was going to get a gimme game versus Florida State, we would still take on Texas because Texas would be number 4. And then Washington would take on Florida State. But how do y'all feel about Florida State getting snubbed? What are your thoughts? Let us know. Put it in the chat. Let us know where you're at. I think they got snubbed. I think they got robbed. All of these kids, to be a Division I quarterback, because that was their concern, that their best player, the defensive end, was missing, and then their quarterback is missing. So with those two positions hampered on the Florida State side, they thought that they were going to miss out on. They weren't going to be as competitive as the field, and that's a lot of crap. It's a lot of you know it's a lot of unexpected bunk, because if you're a team and you have moved yourself in that position, regardless of injury, that means you're a tough team, you're a tough out, and you deserve to be in the spot that you've earned. Um, that's what I believe. That's what I know to be true. That's what I believe. And, you know, that's what I think should have happened with Florida State. Let us know. Do you think that Florida State, just because they were missing their top players, should have been left out of the college football picture? Now let's talk about what we would see out of the college football picture if the 12-team playoff were today. This is what you would see. You would see, now this should have happened this year. So they are a little ways away from what, and I think they wasted a year, because with all the turmoil and all of the chaos that goes on, this is what the field would eventually have turned into. Right? So Oregon at Missouri, winner plays Michigan. So we got Liberty at Florida State, winner plays Bama. Then we got Ole Miss at Georgia, winner plays Texas. And then Penn State at Ohio State, winner plays Washington. So that's what that has amounted to, from a 12-team playoff perspective. And then, of course, we have Bama versus Michigan, Texas versus Washington, and it is looking like a glorious playoff it will be. Interesting to say none the least. We're getting ready to break down Michigan, Bama, but I want to say a little bit about Texas, Washington. I will bring out a video about Texas, Washington a little bit later as we get closer and closer to it. This should be a shootout. A lot of NFL caliber wide receivers and quarterbacks in this one. I don't think the defense, especially on Washington's side, may have the DBs to keep up in a track meet with Washington, with Texas. And Texas, Washington, Texas may come out the victor because they have the better defense in this one. Yeah, man. But let's get back to this right here: lies, hype, and fairy tales about the matchup with Bama. Let's get into it just a bit. And I want to find my screens that I have for you guys. But everybody believes Bama is back, right? Nick Saban is going to ride the white pony. He is going to save college football from the big bad villains of Michigan. And it's going to make everything okay. It's going to make everything worthwhile. College football will return to Fansville, but I'm here to tell you that Bama is not flawless. They're not. And then we're hearing this crazy trope that somehow or another Michigan is scared of Bama. Where they do that at? Where they learn that from? They took a whole lot of hype, lies, and fairy tales from the Michigan video of when they were, when they were waiting for the teams to be selected, and Michigan was reacting to Florida State being snubbed. And somehow they determined that as the mixed reaction to that to mean that Michigan was scared of Bama. Never in a million years. Let's bring that on, man. Them Wolverines are going to get in that ass, and there's good reason for it. I'm going to say that again. The Wolverines are going to get in that Bama ass, and there's a good reason for it. There's a very, very good reasons for it. And it's not because Nick Saban has been one of the more celebrated coaches in the last 20 years. And it's not because Nick Saban has won more championships than any other coach in the last 20 years. And it's not because Nick Saban wins most of these games and Jim Harbaugh doesn't win a lot in the postseason. That's not going to be the reason why. I was doing an assessment, and I wasn't going to do this now. I was going to do a matchup per matchup type of assessment as we get closer and closer and closer to the actual game. And what I'd like to say first is, this Michigan team has been through a lot of scrutiny. Just like Florida State fell under scrutiny, so did this Michigan program all season long. The Get Along gang decided to tattletale or create some sort of mass hysteria. And the Wolverines championship season program has been under a microscope, being analyzed from the rooter to the tutor all season long. And meanwhile, teams around college football have been getting a pass for the most part. And a pass in the fact that they are not as good as they claim to be. A pass in the fact that, the hype machine can move them along. And you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about your Penn States. What happened to Drew Aller? I thought Drew Aller was supposed to be this great quarterback. He was supposed to be this white pony for Penn State. And he was supposed to resurrect the Penn State program with his wonderful arm. And all Michigan did was getting that ass. What happened to Kyle McCord and Maserati Marv? All Michigan did was getting that ass. So now what happened to Maryland, Kenneth Grant forcing folks into safeties in the end zone, and we are where we are. Michigan is victorious. But yet none of that seems to matter while we're under the season of being under the microscope and all of the Big Ten and all of college football trying to tattletale on a Michigan program under tenets of things that the Michigan program is doing that everyone in college football is doing to a lesser or a greater degree, which is advanced scouting. There's been teams that have been associated with it, like Arkansas and, teams abroad like Auburn and Georgia. Tennessee has been in that mix, even Alabama. You know what I mean? Now there's even talks that, Ohio State colluded with Purdue to give signs and signals to teams that Michigan was playing in the playoffs the year before, the last time we were here. So all of that's going on, but yet Michigan is the one with the hourglass over and the microscope over the program. But I'm here to tell you that Alabama is not flawless. The Alabama window, the Alabama mirror, Fansville is not flawless. And one of the things that doesn't make them flawless straight away is the fact that right here, Michigan is third in FBS returning team production. And then if you look on the other end of the spectrum, Bama is 125th in returning team production. So what does that mean? That means that Michigan has a lot of chemistry and a lot of togetherness. Whereas Bama has a lot of talent, but they a lot of young dudes. Talent versus team chemistry. A lot of young dudes versus a lot of family and team chemistry. Now I'm going to pull up Bama's roster, right? We're going to our lads, and we're going to pull up Bama's roster real quick. And we're going to tell you just how young they are. Because you're going to say, well, what's going on? How are they so young? They're either young or they're inexperienced. So let's check it out. Malik Benson is a transfer. So is Jermaine Burton, a transfer. Isaiah Bond is a sophomore. Whoa, we didn't know that. Let's talk about their offensive line. Their left tackle, Proctor, is a freshman. Tyler Booker is a sophomore. Roberts is a sophomore. 81, Dupree is a transfer. Jalen Milroe is a sophomore. Jan Miller is a sophomore. Wow, did y'all realize how much of their offense was either young, transferred, or inexperienced? Who in the world is talking about that right now? Who's talking about how inexperienced and how much lack of team production that they have on going up against a team that returns that's third in FBS returning team production and has a whole lot of veteran presence and a whole lot of veteran chemistry? Nobody's talking about that. Does that make a difference in the world of college football? Does that make a difference in the world of winners and losers? I think it does. I think it absolutely does. Now, let's go. So we're talking about lies, hype, and fairy tales. So we heard the hype. We heard that Saban is gonna dog walk Michigan, and watch out for Jalen Milroe. He's gonna run it. He's gonna throw it. He's a mutant out there. He's gonna transform into an elephant and trample the whole Michigan defense. We've heard it all, but what we haven't heard is the truth. We're gonna see the truth when they pop up in Pasadena But before that, we're gonna hear a little bit of the truth because this Alabama team is what? Not flawless. So let us know in your comments, what have you seen that could tell you why this Bama team is not flawless? Um, and let's see if y'all ready to get to it. Let's see if y'all ready to get to it and do it. Why is this Bama team not flawless? I gave you one tidbit. They're a young team. Oh, I didn't even go over the defense on the young side of the game. All right, let's go over the defense on the young side of the game. 96, sophomore. Now he's a baller. Keenan, he's a baller. Tim Keenan is a baller, but he's a sophomore. Jaheim Otis, a sophomore. Dante Lawson, sophomore. Marshall, number 17, is a transfer. Man, this team is young. Terrian Arnold, a sophomore. You got Caleb Downs. He's a transfer. Kool-Aid McKinstry is a junior, and Malachi Moore is a senior. So those two are steady. But this is a young team. And how much are you going to put a young team that has more talent than chemistry in the fray, trying to talk about how good they're going to be in the big dance of it all, which is the Rose Bowl? They ain't never been out to the Rose Bowl. And it was smart that Michigan picked the Rose Bowl because it's a slower surface. So now you got a slower surface with an inexperienced team that has to watch the sunset while they're trying to, throw unicorns and rainbows and lollipops all over the field. And the Michigan defense is supposed to just sit there and let that happen because it's Bama, and Bama is football gods, or at least the SEC. But let's talk about some weak links, right? We're not going to continue to let the talking bobbleheads of the world not inform you of these weak links because they have plenty. Okay, so let's get to it. That number 74, which is that Proctor, I seen him get I seen him pass pro get really eaten up by a good rushing either linebacker or a defensive end. And Michigan doesn't lack any of that. Then I seen that 65, who was their junior, Latham. I seen him against Georgia and against Texas, against quality interior linemen, get his lunch eaten. Now let's talk about number 91, number 17, number 50, and number 96. Thieves in the middle of the defense. I'm talking wide open. And I don't know why nobody talks about Ole Miss when the quarterback ran right up the middle and scored. I don't know why anybody's talking about Georgia when their quarterback ran right up the middle in pass sets, and nobody's talking about why that middle has been open all season long. Now, when I broke it down for you guys that they're a young team and they got a bunch of transfers and a bunch of young kids playing in those optimal positions, now you understand why. Lastly, their secondary, those safeties. Those safeties are on roller skates in the mud. When they played Georgia and they put the tight end for Georgia, number 19, in the fray, running a high-low or attacking the post with two routes, those safeties, especially 6, and 6 is Caleb Downs, the transfer. No, I'm sorry, that's number 2. Jalen Key, Jalen Key, number 6. That dude was stuck in the mud. And he's a transfer. So that might be, or it might mean that he's not that familiar with the Bama playbook. So that means when it's time to run the play, versus being instinctive and being an athlete, and you're young and you're in there for the first time and you're not used to, you just can't react what you're trying to do, what the playbook tells you to do and what the coaches are telling you to do, versus just going out there and playing and being instinctive. What does that do for a safety that doesn't get drops and that's attacked in the post by two receivers, a tight end and a wide receiver? It puts you in a questionable position. Now, who did this to him? Georgia. Who else did this to him? Auburn and Texas. So if you're telling me that you get a mature team with a good quarterback, and we did the very same thing to a good Ohio State team when JJ threaded in between the two DBs to connect with Roman Wilson, I don't see why we can't do that to Bama, especially for a defensive secondary that at the safety position is pretty weak. Now, their corners, McKinstry and Arnold, those are ballers. McKinstry and Tyrion Arnold are ballers. Those two dudes could get it done. And what I'm thinking is what's going to happen is if JJ's rolling out and they're creating some sort of a scramble drill and JJ's able to thread those safeties, you're going to find people like Colston Loveland and AJ Barner wide open because you got Roman Wilson and CJ Johnson and maybe even Samaj Morgan attacking the safeties. And then you get a lot of converted first downs and maybe even touchdowns because those dudes are stuck in mud. I'm going to put that weak link screen back up again. So I'm going to do I told you so video when the Rose Bowl is over with. So remember I told you that 74 is weak on that offensive line. Matter of fact, Bama is really high in sacks this year. Bama has taken a lot of sacks this season. And this is possibly the reason why. They're young at a lot of positions on that offensive line. Now, if I'm Jesse Minter, where do you think I'm attacking that Bama offensive line? I'm attacking them on that left side that features a freshman and a sophomore, 74 and 52. I'm attacking them with my best defensive ends. I'm attacking them with my best stunts, my best linebackers. I'm sending them off of a 7 or a 9 technique. I am sending the house. You know what I mean? Because this dude, these two are liabilities. Okay? That's what I'm doing. If I'm Jesse Minter and I'm in the pass game, I'm attacking these safeties with my tight ends and my slot receivers because I don't believe if they have 2 or more routes coming at them that those safeties know who to take in what situation. And with JJ threading the needle, man, that's going to be advantage Michigan all day. We might get about 10 points on just secondary errors from the Bama safety position. Trust me when I say this. Now, what will be good about it is if we can establish the run versus Bama so that we have no choice but to draw those safeties up. And once you draw those safeties up, now you're able to play action, RPO, and get those safeties into bad positionings because they don't get a drop. Those safeties don't get a drop. And when you don't get a drop, you can easily get behind them. If you're getting even, you're leaving. You know what I'm saying? Now, let's review. What are some of the reasons why Michigan? There's a bunch of lies, caca, hype, and fairy tales about the Bama versus Michigan matchup. Number one, it was returning production. Michigan has a shit ton of return of production, whereas Bama features a lot of young dudes and they're very inexperienced. So we got inexperience right there, right? Then we got a lot of weak links on this team. because Alabama's not flawless, and the weak links will show up. The weak links showed up versus superior competition, like Auburn, like Georgia, like uh who else is it? Tennessee, like who else is it? Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Auburn, South Florida, Tennessee. And the way that those games ended weren't the way that they played throughout. So much so, Jalen Milroe was making so many mistakes that Nick Saban even benched him during the first quarter of the season to, I don't know if it was to, give him a spark or to help him clean it all up. But the dude got benched. He got benched in the first quarter of the season. And some of y'all might say, hey, well, JJ in the third game of the season had a bad game. Why did Michigan bench JJ? Well, they didn't have the pressure that Bama has down there in Tuscaloosa now. You know what I'm saying? So we reviewed. They're a young team. They have many, many, many weak spots, especially the left side of that offensive line is weak. Many, many weak spots on that defensive front. 32 does not like to hold the edge. That's one of their outside backers. Let's see if we can get his name in the fray. Dante Lawson, and he's a sophomore, right? He's a redshirt sophomore. So again, lots of inexperience. And he doesn't hold the edge as well. See the Georgia game. Georgia was pulling, and he wanted to make the play versus remembering his responsibilities as a linebacker, which is to take on the pulling guards and the pulling blockers so that your safeties can force fill and make the play, middle linebackers and safeties. But what he wanted to do is wanted to be a hero. And then, of course, at those junctures, Georgia got outside with their running game on 32. And they also ran up the middle pretty good because 50, 91, and 17 weren't getting the job done. And you can go all the way back to Ole Miss, and you will see that happen in Ole Miss too. So what was happening versus Georgia and what was happening versus Ole Miss, which is the first quarter of the season and the end of the season in the championship game, those errors repeated themselves. So those are going to be things that are going to be tried and true no matter what team they're playing. So here we go. We're moving along. Now, so we want to talk about lies, hype, and fairy tales because there's a whole lot of commentators and bobbleheads talking sports heads saying a lot about the clandestine nature of Bama and what Bama is going to do to Michigan. And Michigan is going to get dog walked, the message boards all over college football. But I'm here to tell you, Bama got challenged all season long. And if you go back and you look at all of these games, you will see now Texas is the main one because Texas was the one where they took the L. Right? But if you go ahead and you look back at Georgia, LSU, Ole Miss, Tennessee, South Florida, and Auburn, you will see that Alabama got challenged. And how is that the case with the great Nick Saban? You're not supposed to challenge the great Nick Saban. You're supposed to just lay down, genuflect, bow, capitulate to the greatness of Nick Saban. Well, all you sportscasters can take Nick Saban's nuts out your mouth because, once again, Farmsville is not flawless. Why? Because they're a young team. 2, because they have many weak links. And 3, because they got challenged by many, many teams in the SEC. And the picture of what took place during the season with Bama doesn't tell the whole story. Don't believe all the metrics and the statistics. It wasn't that way all season long. Now, let's talk about Jalen Milroe. Now, the positives of a young brother in Jalen Milroe is a lot. He's a very talented dude. He's about 6'4", almost 6'5". He can run. He gives you that kind of, you know, Cam Newton dual presence where he can run, he can throw, he can make himself effective in those regards. And everybody wants Michigan to run for the hills and be scared of Bama because of what this dude, Jalen Milroe, has in the bag. He's a hot dual threat quarterback who can throw it and run it. He has a good arm and he runs really well. Runs a little high for my taste. I think he can run behind his pads a little more. We'll see when you get Quentin Johnson and you get Junior Colson and you get Mikey Sanders still, and they come up and they put that crack on that back. We're going to see. But here are some of his statistics. 2,600 yards passing. 2,600 yards for the season, but 6 interceptions. That's key. 2 games. Now, for the vaunted ability to run, he only had 2 games over 100 yards rushing. LSU and Auburn. And then he has a 92.5 grade with no pressure on him. And if you watch the Georgia game and you watch some of the other games where he has had a gang of time to throw the ball, he's patting that ball once. He's patting that ball twice. And then he throws a moon ball to Burton or Isaiah Bond, and it bails him out of a 3rd and long or 2nd and long or something to that effect. Now, let's talk about the minuses. Even though Jalen Milroe is talented, he throws a crap ton of 50-50 balls. A crap ton of them. Now, if you're not familiar with, college ball or high school ball or just, how a quarterback operates, you want to lead your receiver when you throw the ball to him. You want to put a little air under it, or you want to put it maybe a pace in front of him and let the receiver reach out for the ball so that they can be athletic, run with the ball in their hand, and make a lot of plays. Now, when you start instituting and putting 50-50 balls into the mix, what you do when you have 50-50 balls is you're putting the ball at the hip of the receiver. You're putting the ball real low where it can be contested, either at the hip of the receiver or at the chest of the receiver, or you're throwing behind the receiver. And the tail of the tape says if Jalen Milroe does that versus Michigan, Mikey Sanders still and Will Johnson is going to pick those balls off. I'm telling you now. Don't give Mikey Sanders still a 50-50 ball. I'm telling you. And if you look at that Georgia championship game, he threw about 3 or 4 50-50 balls that died at the hip of the receiver. And if those Georgia D-backs would have turned around and played the ball instead of getting some bad pass interference calls, right, where the Georgia coordinator lost his crap, right, about those 50-50 calls, they would have had about 2 picks on Milroe. I'm telling you, because those balls died right at the hip of the receiver, right? Now, for all of the super duper hot running that he do, he only averages about 3.4 yards per carry. That's not great. And he had only 2 games where he ran for over 100 yards, but he had 3 games where he had negative rushing yards or yards that weren't impactful on the impact of the game. So that's Texas A&M, Texas, Arkansas, and Tennessee. Those games were negative rushing yard games for Jalen Milroe. So once again, Farmsville is not perfect. Was my chart right? Fansville is not flawless. It's not. But let's get back to Milrow. So he's 92.5 graded with no pressure. But isn't that everybody? If you get a number one, if you get a highly recruited 4 or 5 star quarterback and you give him 6 seconds you give him 5 seconds in the pocket, yeah, they're gonna find a way to connect and have a pretty high quarter QBR grade, right? But this dude drops all the way to 57% under pressure. 57% under pressure. So why aren't the analysts talking about the drop off in production when Milrow is under pressure? Lies, hype, and fairy tales is what I call it. Because under pressure, this young man loses about almost 50% of his production. 40 to 50% of his production drops when he's under pressure. And he's working from a young offensive line. Yeah, they got talent, but they're young. Now, something that I also noticed, okay, is that in moments where where this young man is under pressure, and you can go back and check the Auburn game, you can go back and check the Georgia game, you can go back and check the LSU game and the Texas game. I mean, not the LSU game, the Ole Miss game and the Texas game. His footwork declines when he's under pressure. His footwork is not pointed and he's not pocket pushing or he's not pocket moving in a proper way under pressure. And then when he releases that ball, that back foot is doing a stutter. He's not driving the ball with his back foot, planted in the ground where he can get some strength and get some torque underneath it. That back foot is popping, and that front foot is not pointed where the ball is going. Now, against Ole Miss, that had him throwing an interception in the end zone. It was third and long, somewhere in the second quarter, and he couldn't read that they were in man zone, and that safety jumped right in front of that pass and picked it off. And if you go back and you look at his footwork was bad in that position. Now, you go back to the 2 picks he threw against Texas, same deal. Second and long, third and long, pressure on him. He couldn't read man from man zone. Ball gets picked off. Bad footwork. Go look at what I'm saying to you. I'm not telling you wrong. I wouldn't lead you wrong. I wouldn't lead you to run amok. I wouldn't lead you astray. These are the things that are happening. And for what it's worth, I want to talk to you guys about some of the stats of Michigan versus Bama. Because you would think Michigan is some poo butt who never did nothing during the course of the season, but just kind of rolled through a light schedule. But let's talk about it. Michigan is second in total defense, second in pass defense. So you taking a really elite pass defense, and you're asking a dude in Jalen Milrow that only is, let's see what Alabama stacks up in passing offense. 18th in scoring offense. So you're taking the first or the second total defense and putting it against the 18th in scoring offense. 14th in converting third down conversions. I'm telling you, man, something got to give. And his feet are bad in under pressure, and his QBR drops by 50%, almost 40 to 50% under pressure. Man, it's a lot of hype, fairy tales, and lies going on from these political football talking bobbleheads that decided to make Michigan the enemy this year and hype up everybody around them. We heard it. Penn State was going to do a whole lot to Michigan. Didn't happen. Old State was going to do a whole lot to Michigan. Didn't happen. You even had people picking Iowa, who has no offense, and they were supposed to do something against Michigan, and they got a shutout put on that ass. They got a zero burger put on that ass with fries. And now you're asking the Alabama with the 18th scoring offense to come up against the first overall total defense, second and pass defense, second in turnover margin. I don't think y'all know what that means. Second in turnover margin. That means we get that ball turned over. That means if he throws those 50-50 balls versus Michigan DBs, if Rod Moore gets a hand on it, if Sanders still or Johnson gets a hand on it, Makari Page, you are talking interceptions. They've done it all year. They're probably the best scoring defense in the FBS right now. I'm not tooting my horn. I'm saying what's not being said on the major outlets. And I know this took a while, but I had to get to it. Let's get back to it. Anyway, so that was just my little guilty pleasure right there. Okay. So what are we talking about? We are talking about the fact that there's a lot of capping in the media. A lot of capping in the media. And I think there's a lot of capping because the SEC and the ESPN have that contract. So you got the bag on the line. So you got to promote who's paying your bills, right? But I think the Rose Bowl is going to be a bang bang affair. I don't think it's going to be Bama dog walking Michigan the way they think they are. Why? Because Auburn ran for 300 total plus yards on Bama. That's a problem. Georgia had 2 rushing touchdowns on Bama. That's a problem. Texas ran for over 100 yards on Bama. That's a problem. Not to mention that all these teams were very competitive against Bama to the point where Milroe had to be benched by Saban because these teams were problems when they shouldn't have been. Okay? So don't tell me that this particular game here with Bama versus Michigan is going to be somebody's cakewalk. Miss me on that. As a matter of fact, I think Michigan is going to give them the business because if Auburn can rush on them, if Georgia can rush on them, if Texas can rush on them, that's what Michigan does. Michigan runs the football. And we set you up for bigger and greater things down the line after we play that bully ball on you that we did against Ohio State, Penn State. Yo, if the stats ain't great for Blake Corum this year, the touchdowns are. Don't look at the yards. Look at how many times this dude has gotten in the end zone. We play bully ball. That's what Michigan does. And don't think when it's Saban versus Harbaugh and Michigan has a 7 or a 10-point lead that Harbaugh isn't going to take a quarter and just play bully ball and grind it out versus them Bama dudes. Don't think it's not going to happen. And then when they had a team who actually did play bully ball with them and was fairly consistent, Auburn ran for 300 yards on these dudes. And I don't know if you guys watched the Georgia game, but Georgia in short yardage blasted through that 0 gap, that 1 gap, that 2 gap, that 3 gap. Bama blasted to the point where the short yardage game was really poor for Bama. Really poor. So that's what I'm saying, man. Don't give me the lies. Don't give me the hype. Don't give me the fairy tales. Give me the real story. And the real story is This Rose Bowl game is going to be a lot more competitive on the Michigan side of the ball than it will be at all. But guess what? You guys keep sleeping. You guys on the message board, Bama fans and FBS fans, Ohio State fans and Penn State fans that don't like Michigan, Rutgers people that just want to, you know, you know, throw a poison pill in the water. Y'all keep giving these Michigan players on Twitter, on IG and Facebook, y'all keep giving these dudes motivation. Keep giving them fire. Keep lighting the fire under their asses and see what happens in this Rose Bowl. See what happens. Yeah, I saw what happened when you light a fire under them versus Ohio State. Their man went down. The very next play, they took it to the house. Don't play with these dudes. Don't give these dudes something to play for. Don't give these Michigan Wolverines a reason. But I think y'all are foolish. I think y'all are going to keep doing it. And I think it's going to happen to the detriment of all those who consider Michigan an inferior opponent to Bama. I don't. I think Michigan is going to beat that ass. But I was just listening to the Taylor Lewan podcast, and they think Michigan is going to beat Bama by double digits. Now, I won't say that, but I will say if we can get our quarterback and number 1 and number 18 on number 6, I think that's 7 points waiting to happen. I think that's 7. I think that's a 7 burger waiting to be put on the board. I don't think this dude knows what he's doing. I don't think he knows Bama's playbook. And I think the corners may overcompensate for his lack of ability. And I think that's going to open up passing lanes for the tight ends and even Donovan Edwards, even Samaj Morgan. Now, let's talk about this real quick as we wrap it up. Flip City, 5-star recruits and transfers come play for the University of Michigan, the best team in the Big Ten, soon to be the best team in college football. Why is that so? Why do we want our team? Why? Because we had a great year. And we have a lot of these dudes here that are flip recruits who I think can flip on over and do the Amazing Blue a great service. So we got David Pele, who already flipped and from USC and came over to Michigan. Everybody's seen his commitment online. Great thing to do. Great choice to make. I think he's going to be a versatile player. I think he's right in the Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant mold, just not as tall, but I think he's going to be like your new Mozzie Smith of sorts and be really strong as a one technique for the Amazing Blue. Gatlin Bear, there's now a crystal ball for Gatlin Bear. Marcus Wembley, who was a safety, really fast safety that was supposed to go to University of Arkansas. He decommitted, and there's rumors that he's ready to commit to the University of Michigan. Courtney Crutchfield, another receiver that was supposed to be committed to the University of Arkansas, is now thinking about a big body receiver too, is now thinking about committing to Michigan. And there's a lot of transfers that we're looking at that I think Michigan can benefit from as well. We got Dante Moore, who was a long-time big-time Michigan recruit who went to UCLA, didn't fare well there, and now he's back in the waters, crystal ball to come to Michigan. You got Trevor Etienne, running back out of Florida. Michigan is testing the waters with him. You got Jay Sean Barham out of Maryland, number 1. And he's a very skilled linebacker that we could use. Now that Mikey Barrett is moving on after the year's over, we could use him in the Mikey Barrett role. We got Upton Stout out of Western Kentucky. He's supposed to be help us out in the Mike Sanderstill role. He's linked to come to Michigan straight away. Warren Nolan out of Texas A&M. Now, I would love to see this happen for the Maize and Blue. He was already highly recruited, and came down to the Maize and Blue and Texas A&M, and Warren Nolan chose Texas A&M. And I think with Texas A&M's turnover in the coaching ranks, and I think his experience there has got him back in the transfer portal, and I think he is going to be worth looking at as a particular transfer. Now, Donovan McCulley is also rumored to Michigan. There hasn't been anything that came from him directly, but he's in the transfer portal as well. Really big, 6'5", big, bulky receiver who can go downfield. And if we keep Roman Wilson for another year, maybe Donovan McCulley comes in and provides that big body receiver like a Cornelius Johnson and gives us that in the passing game, challenges Darius Clemens for that number 2 spot if Roman Wilson sticks around. And then we got Nitro Tuggle out of Georgia that we're trying to flip. And he looks like we might be getting some competition for the Nitro Tuggle flip in Florida State. So, because Cam Ward is also being rumored to go to Florida State. So we got a lot of interesting stuff from the flips on the side of recruits and the flips on the side of the transfers. Stay tuned to the Big House Breakdown for all things Flip City, for all things transfer, for all things Michigan recruits. Flip City is here for you. We got plenty of trampolines at the back of Schembechler Hall. You guys can go back there, flip around, bounce around, do things, do it how you want, what you want. We are here for you. Empire is trying to strike back. Get with a winner. Come join the Maize and Blue. And that is going to do it tonight for our lies, hype, and fairy tales episode of the Big House Breakdown. Join us as we are going to do similar videos throughout the month and break down what we're hearing and what we're seeing from prognosticators all over the college football world. And let us know what you think and how you think this is going to progress. I think the margin and the spread is going to get bigger and bigger as we approach the college football playoff, because I think people will start to come to their senses. I think people will start to realize that Michigan is more of a complex opponent than Alabama or any of the talking bobbleheads would admit. And I think that if we get Colston Loveland and Donovan Edwards involved in the passing game, even Blake Corum involved in the passing game, and we get 1 or 2 snap plays out of Samaj Morgan, I think we're going to give Alabama more than they thought they could chew on. Now, the one thing that I haven't seen all season long was a good screen to the running backs pop off. Now, you might see that happen in the championship game because Dallas Turner is coming off that edge like he got his ass on fire. And he's a very good pass, he's a very good pass rusher for the Crimson Tide, and he might be a bit much for our offensive tackles. But guess what? If we see that and we strategically game plan around it, we can definitely get some hay and make some great plays in that way, strategizing, using their momentum against them. I am really interested to see what the coaches can scheme up with the month that they have to do what they have to do. I think we have to make them fear our passing game. And then once they do that, then all things are on the table. And I also think we have to make them fear our running game. And that might be the great equalizer to their pass rush. because we're not going to give up on our run game. We're going to bang, and we're going to bang you some more up the gut with Blake Corum, with Khalil Mullins, with Donovan Edwards. And if we're playing a flip field game all game long, and that's the way we win. Michigan's great. Michigan's fine doing that. Is Bama fine playing a flip game all game long? If the score is only 10-3 in the third quarter, is Bama okay playing a flip the field type of game? I know Michigan is. I know Tommy Doman is great at pinning a real young Bama offensive line deep in their own territory. And we're going to put Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham on that ass up the middle. Oh, boy. Remember what happened in Maryland? I could see that happening here, too. And just remember one thing. Everybody loves Jalen Milroe. But running quarterbacks in the game of college football make a lot of mistakes trying to play hero ball. And I'm going to leave that where it is. Like, share, subscribe. Timestamp what you like about the video. Let's get at it. And as always, go Blue.